All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for the Massachusetts Sierra Club Solidarity Campaign Action Hour. What we're going to do is Celeste and I are going to run through three campaigns that staff and volunteers have chosen to support. These are campaigns that are not part of our traditional environmental movement. Part of that is to build, our political allyship with other partners, such as those in environmental justice communities, and trying to represent issues that benefit folks in Massachusetts, and use some of the political power that we have as an organization to show the solidarity that we have with issues and folks who are working on these three different campaigns, which will be the Indigenous Legislative Agenda, Homes for All, and Corporate Fair Share. So we're going to go through the presentations of what the campaigns are. We're going to talk a little bit about how you can take action. Hopefully these actions will stay relevant through 2026 before the election season and the ballot initiative cycle. We'll talk more about those details. And then we'll have a short Q&A after, which will not be part of the recording. But if you have any questions, please reach out to Celeste or I, or anybody on staff at Sierra Club Massachusetts. Great. So I'm going to pass it to Celeste. I think we can just get into it.
You able to advance the slide? There we go. Awesome. So these slides are coming to us courtesy of our awesome partners at the North American Indian Center in Boston. And we're going to be chatting a little bit first about the Massachusetts Indigenous Legislative Agenda, which is a set of 5 bills that, if you can advance to the next slide, they are championed by a broad coalition of groups, CORE, NICOB, who I just mentioned, and the United American Indians of New England, as well as a bunch more partners. And if you can go to the next slide, that'll show you what those 5 bills are. So these bills have been submitted in past sessions as well, so you may already be familiar, but to quickly run through for folks who may not have heard before, they are a bill to honor Indigenous Peoples Day, protect Native American heritage, remove racist mascots, celebrate and teach Native American culture and history, and educate Native youth. So, and Honor Indigenous Peoples Day is maybe one of the easiest ones to understand because it's just replacing Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day on Mass General laws. So, changing the second Monday in October to Indigenous Peoples Day acknowledges the harmful impact of celebrating Columbus as a hero. Historical accounts prove that wherever they went, Columbus and his men murdered and enslaved Indigenous people. The repercussions continue to be keenly felt even now. Indigenous Peoples Day replaces something negative with something positive, an increased awareness of Indigenous peoples, and a celebration of Indigenous resilience and survival in Massachusetts, as well as throughout the Americas. So, as this bill was heard in the beginning of June, but it has not yet been reported out of this Committee on State Administration and Regulatory Oversight. On to the next one. So, protect Native American heritage. This bill would ensure that Native American funerary objects, sacred objects, and objects of cultural patrimony, those of cultural, traditional, or historical importance to their heritage, will not be held in government, full municipal or nonprofit collections are not sold for profit. Excuse my word struggling there. So that bill has not had a hearing scheduled yet. It's in the Joint Committee on Tourism, Arts, and Cultural Development. So we're going to be hoping that that gets scheduled soon. On to the next one. Also, this one's pretty simple to understand as well. We want to remove racist mascots from our schools in Massachusetts. So that list at the bottom there is 22 schools in the Commonwealth who currently use such mascots. And according to 2020 data from the U.S. States Census Bureau, there are more than 90,000 Native American people living in Massachusetts, many of whom attend Massachusetts public schools. And Native American mascots are likely a violation of state and federal anti-discrimination laws. including the Massachusetts anti-bullying law. Often school districts fear community backlash and so fail to fulfill their full legal responsibility to protect all students from this discrimination. Civil rights issues should never be decided in the court of public opinion. Municipalities must not be allowed to violate civil rights laws because of community resistance to change. And this bill was heard in mid-June, and thankfully the Senate version got a favorable report and is now on its way to the Ways and Means Committee. But the House version has not been reported out yet. Um, and on to the next one. Okay, so the next one gets into the two bills that are a little bit more about education. And so this bill addresses the lack of Indigenous curriculum in Massachusetts public schools. Students rarely learn about Native American history, myself included. I wouldn't say my Massachusetts public school experience had much of this history at all, so definitely see this as a need. Um, there is a hearing coming up for this one quite soon, actually, September 16th at 11 a.m. So very, very timely. And the next bill as well is in the same hearing. And that one is also on education, but this time educating Native youth. So this proposes a permanent commission towards improving educational outcomes and opportunities for American Indian and Alaska Native students. Broader impacts of the commission are the promotion of tribal self-determination by providing students with the opportunity to learn their heritage, languages, and histories while preparing them for higher education. And that's a lovely little photo on this slide from an event NICOB had not so long ago. And so I mentioned we've got a hearing coming up for the last two bills there, but generally, NICOB was shouting out that we've had a close to 100 organizations endorse, and two bills have been heard already. One reported out favorably, which is the banning native mascots one. But there's the overall link for NICOB's action alert on all five of these bills in linked there, which I will drop in the chat in a second. And they also wanted to shout out that on October 11th, on Indigenous Peoples Day, they have their annual march at Park Street Station at 12 noon. So lots of good stuff coming in.
All right. Thank you, Celeste. Yeah, so that was a great overview. I think that's the only one that's going to be a suite of multiple bills, and we're making some progress. I think we're making progress on the seal and the flag and the sign. I don't know exactly the situation there. But yeah, really, really excited to see this, and I will plan to be at the Indigenous Peoples Day March. Cool. So I'm going to move us on to the Homes for All campaign and coalition. So this is a space of housing advocates, tenant unions, folks who work on housing justice, making housing accessible and affordable to everybody in the Commonwealth. Getting together, they did have a suite of bills and issues that they supported, and the main one that we're all going to focus on is the rent control campaign. So this is a little bit of connective tissue here. I think a lot of people see really easily how Indigenous rights, for example, is connected to the environmental movement. I think one thing that we did want to also talk about is how housing justice and then the third solidarity campaign, corporate fair share, are also very much connected to our fight for climate justice. So right here, you can read this paragraph. It essentially makes the case for social resilience. One of the effects of climate change is going to be things like extreme weather events, flooding, hurricanes. We see these climate effects already in Boston with flooding, for example, heat waves, and really nature is not going to be nature will suffer some of the effects, but nature can bounce back. It's humans who are gonna really, really have a hard time. Human civilization's gonna have a really hard time responding to climate change. And we already see some of the effects of that. Having safe, affordable places that people can live, where people can join a community, be part of their community, where we have things like cooling centers, community centers, places for people to congregate and support each other. Much like we saw mutual aid during COVID, having the social resilience is going to be one of our primary ways to respond to the climate crisis as it continues. So we see a oh, here we go. We see a big connection between the fight for housing justice and climate. We also saw this from on the federal level. The first proposals, policy proposals attached to the Green New Deal were around housing policy. So this is something that we're going to be prioritizing and following very closely in Massachusetts. We have a little bit of education here about rent control. Uh, it does have a long history in the United States, going through different kinds of programs, going between federal and state and local policy. I think something to note is that we did have some form of rent control, price control in Massachusetts, and it was actually voted down. So what we see here is in 1994, they actually banned rent control so that municipalities, even if everybody, all the residents in the municipality wanted to have some sort of law restricting rent increases, the municipality is not allowed to do that. There's also a lot of breakdowns that you can go through to see like a urban rural divide. You could see kind of what the polling was of how people who lived in the municipalities that had rent control voted versus people who did not live in those municipalities, which is really interesting and I think going to really inform some of the strategy going into the action step. So, in response to this, the housing justice advocates have filed a rent control bill in the State House. It's been filed for at least 3 sessions and as a housing justice priority. And I think the reception to it has been pretty good in the Massachusetts State House. The bill is going to So the bill in the State House is going to allow for municipalities to have a local option to have some form of price control. And this is part of a broader housing agenda. So there's all these different issues: foreclosure prevention, Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, which Sierra Club has signed on to, right to counsel and eviction ceiling. They kind of talk a little bit about the conceptual goals here, and all of these are connected to weatherization assistance program, LIHEAP, different things that we've all advocated for on the energy and Sierra Club side, talking about public health, like the indoor air quality bill, and investing in the Mass Save program, because people deserve affordable and safe and healthy homes to live in. Just living in your home should not kill you. We are building the movement to win. This is a huge coalition with lots and lots of support at the State House and lots of organizational support. With all this support and without getting a bill passed at the State House, the Housing Justice Coalition is choosing to go to the ballot. So for most of you who've lived in Massachusetts for multiple election cycles, you see every 2 years we get the chance to vote on laws directly, ballot initiatives in the state. So they're drafting and currently working with the Attorney General's office to get a rent control question on the ballot, which will be for November 2026. We should not have to wait for the legislature to act. Uh, I think they have most of the legislators as co-sponsors, and still we don't see action. This is something we see in the State House over and over again. So the ballot initiative ties the limit of rent increases to the consumer price index. So it basically says that your rent increases cannot accelerate much faster than other goods inflation. It has to be on par with the inflation you experience on that whole suite. So the way that we're going to advocate for this is we need to do signature collecting. It has to be across different counties in Massachusetts to actually make it to the ballot. And we're working really hard right now to get canvases going in all the counties all across the Commonwealth and use it as an opportunity for education on this issue, as well as giving people the chance to actually vote on it, which we haven't done since 1994. So we have a form. You can link it in the chat. We'll email you the form. We'll link it in chat as well if you can fill it out and gather signatures for rent control in Massachusetts. I'm going to keep going forward and then we'll do a Q&A at the end about this. I'm happy to chat about it. So the next policy is called GILTI. It's also colloquially called the corporate fair share. This policy deck is from is it Mass Budget Center, Mass Budget and Policy Center. They are one of the like main leads and sponsors on this. We're trying to basically say this is the follow-up to the Fair Share Amendment, which folks voted for on the ballot, which passed with a really wide margin, also known as the millionaire surcharge. So this is something else, a different tax policy proposal that we support to build revenue so that the state can spend that money on environmental conservation, so they could spend it on climate, carbon mitigation, and that we can get things that we want, like public transit and the transition to clean energy. So what is GILTI? Global Intangible Low Taxed Income. So federal law requires us to tax this, and it's basically corporate profits hidden offshore. Basically, the way it works is that corporations have tax shelters. They have ways to report their books that reduce their tax burden to the state of Massachusetts. You can see this is one building. I think it's in the Caribbean, and it has like 19,000 corporations in that one building. You'll also see this in the US. Everybody just files as like a Delaware LLC. Corporations are always just looking for ways to get around regulations, to not pay Massachusetts state tax, follow our regulations by saying that they're doing business somewhere else when they're actually just selling things to people in Massachusetts or even have like headquarters here. So this is just an example of how silly it is for the corporations to be making these claims that there's 20,000 of them headquartered in one of these countries. So the combined GDP, so all the stuff that these three countries or these three tax havens make is $14 billion. The reported profits that from US corporations in those three is $79 billion. So this is clearly the corporations trying to pull one over on us and the government to avoid paying taxes, which is our revenue. That is how our, potholes get filled, and all of that is from taxes and our tax base. Massachusetts only taxes a tiny portion of GILTI. It taxes 5% instead of the standard 50%, which leaves hundreds of millions of dollars uncollected. And you'll see here, when I say the standard is 50%, that's actually a federal norm to tax this at 50%. Massachusetts is the outlier by taxing it at a 5% rate. Most of the states in New England are already at a 50% calculation. Is this going to be bad for local businesses? No. It only affects multinational corporations. Your local mom and pop store, your LLC or sole proprietorship, you are not able to claim that you are making all those profits in some country in the Caribbean. You are in Massachusetts and registered here. If you are one of these multinationals that is trying to make these claims to our Department of Revenue, that is who this hits. And it actually makes it better for small businesses because they don't have to compete against the economies of scale and these business practices from big businesses that try to suck up all the market share. These are more charts that kind of say the same things over and over. Um, Basically, just to explain the scale for folks who are really into the numbers on tax revenues and state budgets. Um, what it's saying is that almost virtually all of the guilty profits, the profits that were claimed to be from offshore, those are vastly, vastly uh, reported by large corporations, big multinationals, the corporations that are in like every state and multiple countries. So what can we do about this? We have a bill, H3110 S 2033, which changes the rate from 5% to the federal and New England standard of 50%. And the estimate is that this would raise about $400 million, and it's co-sponsored by a majority of legislators in each chamber. So out of our 200 legislators, over 100 of them are already on this bill. And 400 million is very significant. That would be a huge help for the state, which is seeing budget losses because of the federal policy and the way that the Trump administration is affecting states' budgets. So, yeah, that is the end of the presentation. We can send everybody the links. We will send you a form letter that you could send to your senators and representatives. We're hoping to see action on these issues in the legislature. And if not, we'll see them at the ballot box. So thank you all for joining us today. And yeah, we'll follow up with you.